Hello, welcome, and pranam, and welcome to session 3 of our e-conference today. For all of those who are tuning in just now, we're exploring the concepts of Universal Brotherhood. And through this session, we will be hearing two extremely distinguished speakers who will be presenting their views and thoughts on this concept of Universal Brotherhood. And they will be shedding light on the ancient Vedic culture of India. And when we think of the Vedic culture of India, we know that it was a representation of numerous coexisting traditions and philosophies. And I think one of the most beautiful things was that if a person merely only understood one of these philosophies, they would immediately and automatically understand how to uplift their own selves and also how to help uplift the society. So if, for example, a person only understood the concepts and philosophies of Gayatri and Yajna, they would automatically learn that Gayatri represents the noblest of thoughts and thinking, and Yajna represents noble actions and deeds. If someone only analyzed and learned the law of karma, they would understand how to refine their own actions, and they would also understand the connection that their actions share with all other members of the society. And one such other very important philosophy is that of yoga. Yoga represents the pinnacle of the Indian Vedic culture. And so to speak about this, we will now invite our first distinguished speaker, the renowned Honorable Dr. Chinmay Pandyaji. For those who know him, his life represents a perfect synthesis of yoga. He beautifully and harmoniously balances the roles of advisor, mentor, board member, but also friend, family member, and volunteer. He was a renowned psychiatrist who studied and practiced in London. However, in 2010, heeding an inner call, he returned to Dev Sanskriti Vishwavidyalaya, where he is currently serving as the Pro Vice Chancellor. He is also the director of the School of Yoga and Health and the chairperson of the famous International Festival of Culture, Spirituality, and Yoga. And also, he's the director of Asia's first ever Center for Baltic Culture and Studies. He's represented India in the Intergovernmental Meeting of UNESCO and presented on the topic of intangible cultural heritage. He is the World Health Organization's invited yoga expert. He's convened more than 70 national and international colloquia at DSVV, and he's responsible for ethos, academic rigor, and policy implementation at the school. He serves on the governing body of the Indian Council for Cultural Relations. He's a member of the Advisory Council of the Indian Ministry of Ayurveda, Yoga, Naturopathy, Unani, Siddha, and Homeopathy, or more commonly known as Ayush. He serves as a board of trustees for the India Development Foundation. He's one of the esteemed judges of the globally prestigious Templeton Peace Prize, which is a prize that is considered the equivalent of the Nobel Peace Prize in the field of social service. And he's one of 5 institutional leaders from around the world who is a part of the Global Covenant of Religions. However, I think the accolade that serves him the best is his refined and accomplished personality, because those who meet him immediately develop a bond and a deep level of affection for him. And so with these words, may I now humbly request the Honorable Dr. Chinmay Pandyaji to enlighten us on the topic at hand, which is that of Universal Brotherhood and the yoga philosophy.
Good afternoon to everyone, and my respectful pranams from India. In the subtle presence of Param Puja Gurudev and Paramandaniya Mataji, I would like to start with the recitation of the Gayatri Mantra. Gayatri Mantra is one of the cornerstones of Vedic philosophy. It allows us to walk on the righteous path. The teachings, the vision, the meaning and purpose of the Gayatri Mantra is to help any individual to walk on the path that is right for any human being to take. This is, in essence, is the prayer of Universal Brotherhood. It is the prayer of humanity. So those of you who can chant the Gayatri Mantra, please join with me in this prayer of Ma Gayatri, Gayatri Mantra together. Om Bhurbhuvah Swaha Tatsaviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yo Nah Prachodaya. In the subtle presence of Param Puja Gurudev Paramandaniya Mataji on this very important occasion, when we are aiming to discuss the concept of the Deva Sanskriti in this joint venture between Dev Sanskriti Vishwavidyalaya and Yoga Vidya Ashram of Germany, one of the most beautiful, most scenic and most worthy ashrams to be. It's the largest ashram outside India. When I went there, it was such a divine feeling to enter into the premises of Yoga Vidya Ashram, and I'm very happy that through our joint effort and joint collaboration, this important online webinar is now taking the shape. Thanks to Sukadev ji, thanks to Vedamurti ji, thanks to Narendra ji, thanks to all the learned academicians of Yoga Vidya Ashram. Very heartfelt thanks from Dev Sanskriti Vishwavidyalaya, Shantikunj, Haridwar and Gayatri Pariwar. We are sending this message to you from the foothills of mighty Himalayas and from the lap of Ma Ganga, where we have the headquarters of all World Gayatri Pariwar. Gayatri Pariwar has about 150 million members and thousands of centers all over the world, and each and every Gayatri person is sending their best wishes to you in the Yoga Vidya Ashram. The concept that we have chosen for today's discussion, the concept of Deva Sanskriti, which is also the name of the university that I am currently sitting, Deva Sanskriti Vishwavidyalaya, is one of the most pertinent and one of the most poignant one in the Vedic tradition and Indian philosophy. It is, in some ways, is the foundation of the Indian wisdom traditions. If we want to understand the purpose behind this unique concept of Deva Sanskriti, then we first have to witness the significance of the current times, because we are lucky and unlucky at the same time to have had this opportunity, or we may call it a blessing, to have lived in one of the most historical, precarious, unprecedented times in the history of the mankind. In Sanskrit we call it na bhuto na bhavishyate. It is kind of a time which never came before, and there is a hope that it would never occur in the future. And the reason I say it, not only because we are passing through one of the most challenging years, not only because we are witnessing a global pandemic, not only because we are seeing global tensions and other things, but I am saying more from the point of view, because if we look at the progress of humanity, particularly in the last 2 or 3 centuries, especially in the disciplines of science and technology, then without a shadow of doubt, the progress that we see had been extremely promising. Not only we have conquered the space and landed on the moon, we are already planning to establish a colony on the Mars, and there is no dimension left of the human development, from agriculture to economy, from computing to automation, where we cannot discover the signatures of progress and development. But, and that's a big but, this growth, this development, this progress, which came with technological supremacy, this all seemed to have come at a cost, and this cost is too big to pay. It came at a cost of our psychological, social, and emotional fulfillment and satisfaction. The truth of the current time is that in spite of all these marvelous accomplishments that we have in last 2 or 3 centuries, but if we evaluate the humanity and if we evaluate the personalities of the people, what we find are people with disintegrated beliefs, broken families, and fractured societies. And this seems like a loss far bigger than we can imagine, because we have progressed on outside significantly, but the vacuum that we have created inside the people is too big. People have got money but no satisfaction. They have got prosperity but no contentment. And you can go from Alaska to Azerbaijan, you can go from Indonesia to India, you can go from Sumatra to Suriname. This is the reality of the situation. Reality of the situation is that people have got everything that they seek and desire, but in spite of all that, there is such a vacuum inside the heart and soul of the people that no amount of wealth can repair that damage. And when we search for the solutions, or I would call a decent direction for humanity from here, then what comes to my mind is a concept. I don't say it a word because translation would be difficult. A concept called Sanskriti, because it is inaccurately translated as culture in English. And this is not a problem of translation. This is a problem of the fact that there is no suitable counterpart to this phenomena that we call as Sanskriti in Sanskrit. So it is better to understand that how culture differs from Sanskriti. When we use the word culture, then we are referring it to the geographically or topographically shared practices. So for example, if I use the word Italian culture, then many people would think that I am referring to Italian cuisine or Italian music or Italian dance, eating pizza, pasta, gnocchi, macaroni or something like that, which is a much limited viewpoint or very superficial and restricted kind of viewpoint for something which is extraordinarily vast and superior. And that is why I prefer to use the word Sanskriti, because it refers to something deeper, something more precious and something more pristine, because Sanskriti means refinement. Sanskriti means embellishment in Hindi. A refined individual, we call him Susanskrit, and a refined language is called Sanskrit. And this process of refinement of his or her personality is called Sanskriti. And when we use it like this, when we use the word Sanskriti, then every possible aspect of human personality, from our attitude to our behavior, from our thoughts to our emotions, from our virtues to our devotion, determination to do good things, they all come under the premise of Sanskriti. And this Sanskriti that I refer to, it cannot belong to one country or one race. It belongs to humanity. It is universal and it is eternal. This would make sense to you while you are sitting in Germany, equally while you are sitting in Italy, or you are sitting in US or UK. It makes sense wherever you are. That is why this Sanskriti is called Dev Sanskriti. And this Dev Sanskriti becomes the epitome of universal brotherhood. It becomes the symbol of universality and a feeling of togetherness. And a Bharatiya Sanskriti or Indian culture, or rather Vedic culture, talks about this universality from very, very, very beginning. The virtues that are mandatory to define a human being as a human being. Simple as that. If I want to call myself a human being, then I should have certain qualities. When we look at a cat or we look at a dog, we cannot say that this one is more cat and this one is more dog as compared to other. Dog is dog, cat is cat. But when we look at the human beings, you can say that he has got more humanity than the other person. And this spectrum that we have, where some people have got more humanity as compared to others. Some people have more attributes, more characteristics, more qualities, more virtues, more beautiful sentiments as compared to others. Is the beauty of the humanity, is the beauty of human being. And that is the foundation of Sanskriti. That's why one person becomes much more kind and noble. And when he becomes or she becomes much more kind and noble in one country, she is respected with the same feeling in others. Mahatma Gandhi would become a sign of reverence, not only in India but everywhere else. Mother Teresa, Kagaba, Saint Francis of Assisi, Rabia, others, everyone, because they belong to this school of thought of humanity. They belong to this concept that we have got this possibility of reviving a divine quality inside us by a process of refinement and embellishment, which is what is called as Sanskriti. And usually when we talk about Indian culture or Bharatiya Sanskriti, it gives an impression to the people that there is something that we are talking about that should belong only to the people who are living within the boundaries of India. And precisely that is the barrier that I would like to break. I remember a very beautiful anecdote in this respect, and I would like to share this with you. It is a story of Swami Vivekananda. Everyone knows him. When he returned to India, because he went to US in 1892 to take part in the World Congress of Religion and made a huge name there. The impact that he created was beyond comprehension. And when he returned to India on January 15th, 1897, after his very, very long abroad trip, his ship reached to Colombo. And almost entire city of Colombo gathered to see him. It is possible to empathize with their excitement now, because there was, of course, immense excitement in them. Everyone wanted to see him, meet him, greet him, listen to him. So they organized a huge welcome ceremony to express their respect for Swami Vivekananda and for what he did. And in that ceremony, head of the organizing committee, after welcoming him, asked him a wonderful question. And he asked Swamiji that, Swamiji, you lived for so long in West, and no doubt that your presence made a big impact in the mindset of the people there. For the first time, they could learn about Vedanta, Yoga, Sankhya, and other Indian Vedic wisdom traditions. So your presence was certainly valuable for them. But how did this benefit you? You had to live away from India for 5 years. Great question. And in response, Swami Vivekananda said something even more beautiful. He said that I lived in West for long, and the greatest advantage that I had from this trip is that before I left India, I used to believe in many things just because of sheer belief, because everyone is saying, so you would say the same thing. So that was a blind Shraddha. But now I believe in them with absolute faith and unquestionable devotion. He said that now I believe in them with so much trust that I never had before I left India. He said, because when I was growing up, everyone was saying that India is a special land. It's a Punya Bhumi, it's a land of gods, it's a land of rishis, it's a land of Vedas and Upanishads. And I used to repeat it. But now, when I have lived this far from India, I can say this with a doubtless devotion, that this statement is not an exaggeration, it's not a figment of imagination, it's not a metaphor, but it is absolutely true. He went and he even said that, like, if on entire globe there is one single country, one single nation, where each soul that is aiming to accomplish the final adventure of the human consciousness, then that soul has no other option but to take birth in India. Because without doing that, it would not be possible to accomplish such a colossal feat. He said that if there is one country where compassion, humanity, spirituality, wisdom, and empathy have reached to their ultimate summit, then that country is India. And if not today, then surely tomorrow. The rays of light and waves of wisdom from this land would start influencing the entire world. And what he said so long ago seemed to be true in these days too. Imagine, if this world, this human civilization, had never had any acquaintance with wisdom traditions like yoga, tapa, jnana, vedanta, sankhya, astha, Adhyatma, all those great traditions that took birth in this very land, but for humanity. Just imagine a history of humanity without rishis, without God saints, without Sikh gurus, without Sufi fakirs, without Jaini Tirthankars, without Bhakti Kaleen Kavis, Ram, Krishna, Patanjali and Gurudev, Swami Shivanand. Just imagine for a second that humanity missed the opportunity to witness and embrace those great souls who took birth in this very land of Buddha and Mahavir, land of Gandhi to Gurudev, and the horizons of humanity were not being shaped and fashioned by the radiance and vivacity of their personality, then was it even possible for humankind to scale the summit that it managed to conquer? The science and technology that I started to talk about, was that even possible without creating the concept of humanity within the human beings? We can read the history of the entire world, and you will find that most of the pages of the history books of every single country, they have been filled with the cascade of blood. They are soaked, except the tales of compassion and humanity that come from Buddha, Mahavir, Mudgal, Dadhichi, Aruni, Dalak and so many others, Namdev to Eknath and Tukaram to all the Bhakti-Kaleen Kavis. They visited this land thousands of years ago to proclaim the teachings of peace and harmony and universal brotherhood, when even the concept of language was still at a nascent stage in most of the world. The universities like Nalanda, Takshashila, Vikramshila, they were teaching the concept of universal brotherhood, not only in India, but everywhere else. When we thought that a mindless and maddening race to acquire wealth at the cost of human lives was something that everyone should do. Kings like Siddhartha and Vardhaman and Bhartrihari and Raghu and Dilip and Aj and Ikshvaku, they declared their inclination for benevolence over battles. And this is the beauty of universal brotherhood that Dev Sanskriti teaches us. There comes a very beautiful and remarkable saying in Maha Upanishad, which says, it was written thousands of years ago, remember. It said, Ayam nijah paroveti ganana laguchetasam udara charita namato sudheva kutumbakam. Ayam, this, nijah, mine. Paroveti, that belongs to you. This is mine, that is yours. That kind of feeling belongs to the small-minded people. Udara charita namato. Those who have declared their devotion for Udara Charitra, compassion and empathy. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. For them, entire world is one single family. And this was said 5,000 years ago. We belong to one single family. You may be sitting in Yoga Vidya, Germany. You belong to the Gayatri Pariwar. We may be sitting here. We belong to your family. We all are a part of one single family. Only the people with narrow minds have this attitude that this is mine and that is yours. But the people with big hearts believe the whole world is their extended family. And this concept of Vedic culture or divine culture, as we call it in Hindi, Dev Sanskriti is the foundation of this university that I am currently sitting. It is called Dev Sanskriti for no reason. For us, for all of you, you may have taken births in different continents, in different families, and may have come from diverse background, but we all are part of one single family, a family of unity and a family of humanity. This is how this fabric is created. Gurudev, I would like to introduce him briefly, because Gurudev was who founded this university and who founded the entire fraternity of Gayatri Pariwar with 150 million members. He was one of the most prolific scholars, groundbreaking scholar of modern India, authored more than 3,400 books and orated on every single aspect of human development. He long time ago, he talked about this concept. He said that if humanity has to find a way to survive, then four founding pillars are needed. Ekata, Samata, Shuchita, Mamata. Ekta means unity, Samata means equality, Shuchita means sacredness, Mamata means compassion. Imagine if we don't have those qualities in any human society, that would be a dead society. There would be no feeling, there would be no life, there would be no radiance in it, there would be no vibrations in it, there would be no pulse in it. It would be absolutely dead. If we create a society where there is no equality, if we create a society where there is no solidarity, if we create a society where there is no compassion, if we create a society where there is no sacredness, what the hell we are creating? The idea of Dev Sanskriti is to talk about a concept where Universal Brotherhood is fashioning the new fabric of humanity. And hence I will say that Sanskriti is not a simple term. It's a force like air, fire and light. Air cannot be divided. Not one person can claim that, oh, I can have all the sunlight. Sun is for everyone. Clouds rain for everyone too. The unity is universal and eternal. Separations are transient and temporary. Let us announce through this conference, an online webinar, that as human beings we can never be separated. We can never be divided. And we can never be parted from each other because we belong to one family of humanity. This family of humanity, Gurudev talked about. This family of humanity, all the rishis talked about. This family of humanity, the Indian culture talks about. This family of humanity, the Gayatri Mantra talks about. And this family of humanity, everyone lived for. Everyone lived for. I share a small story before I end this discussion, just to give you an idea that how important it was for rishis to believe in this concept. And this story belongs to Mudgal. Mudgal was a very famous rishi living in the Mahabharat time. And in Mahabharat time, Lord Krishna arranged a yajna. After Mahabharat battle was finished, he called Yudhishthir and he said to Yudhishthir that, listen, you are becoming king now, but that's not the end of your responsibility. That is actually beginning of your responsibility. He said, you are becoming king, but does not mean that now you have got everything that you wanted to have. He said, now you should set a precedence that how people should live in your kingdom. You should create a kingdom of righteousness. He said, I will do whatever you would like to do, you would like me to do. So Lord Krishna asked Yudhishthira to do a yajna. He did a yajna. Yajna is the fire ceremony, sacred fire ceremony. And when yajna finished, then everyone saw that a mongoose came from somewhere. This mongoose was half cold, half normal. And this mongoose was lying in the different, fire altars and was very unhappy. So Lord Krishna called him. Lord Krishna said that, why are you so dejected? Why you look so disappointed? He said, I came here with too much of hope. I said, what do you mean? He said, you can see that I'm half cold and half normal. He said, yeah, I can see that. He said, do you want to know why I am half cold, why I became half cold? Lord Krishna said, yeah, tell me. So he said that I live in the ashram of Maharshi Mudgal. And Mongoose said that Maharshi Mudgal, he was doing a very severe penance. What he used to do, it is called Shiloncha Vritti in Sanskrit, that he used to pick only those grains which have fallen by themselves on the land. So he would never steal anything, he would never pick anything, he would only collect those food grains which automatically came. And then he used to collect those grains, divide them into 3 portions. One he kept for himself, one he donated to the society, one he left for any guest who may be coming to his hut, cottage. And that food also he used to take every 15th day. full moon and dark night. That's it. This was going on. And rest of the time he was doing tapasya, penance, meditation. And this mongoose was telling the story that one day a man came who was bleeding from everywhere. He was heavily injured. He had multiple wounds. He had multiple diseases. He was smelling like anything. There was pus coming out, blood coming out, was in a very dreaded condition. No one wanted to go near him. And everyone was saying, go away, go away. When he went to Mudgal, Mudgal was having food after 15th day. Then Mudgal immediately gave his plate, his food plate to him. Not only he fed him, but he also gave him the water. He was also washing his wounds. And when he was washing his wounds, then this man started to cry that there is a humanity, compassion left somewhere. And Mongoose said that those tears of happiness, they fell on my back. He said, wherever they fell, I became of gold. Rest was normal. Well, since then, I have been going everywhere. Wherever I hear that some kind of religious ceremony is taking place, I go with the hope that if I lie down there, who knows, I will become fully gold. So I came here with too much of hope. He said, I went everywhere but was very despondent, disappointed. He said, first time I heard that Lord is doing the yajna. Dharmaraj Yudhishthira is the organizing secretary. He thought that this is the place where I would get what I was hoping to get. He said, how come I am going disappointed even from here? Lord Krishna said, you are going disappointed, my dear friend, because we are only doing the yajna, but Mudgal is living the yajna. He said, the one who lives for humanity, he needs no further ritual. One who lives for compassion, he needs no more ceremonies. His life is ceremonial. If we follow the path of humanity, our life becomes ceremony. If we follow the path of compassion, our life becomes the ritual. So I pray, wish, hope that through this online webinar, the salient message of Universal Brotherhood, humanity, compassion, which are the essential ingredients of any society to survive, any civilization to flourish, and any culture to remain intact, which is the message of Sanskriti, embellishment, refinement, that would reach to every single listener. Pray for your well-being to Ma Gayatri, Puja Gurudev and Mandaniya Mataji. I also hope that once this pandemic time is over, then all of you would be able to visit us in Haridwar. Our ashram, which sprawls across 500 acres, have never charged anything at all to anyone. It is based on the concept that Gurudev created, that if money is the foundation of any spiritual effort, then it just pollutes the purpose. So, welcome to all of you, and I hope that one day we would be able to see you here in the premises of Haridwar. Pranams to everyone.
Thank you so much, Honorable Chinmayji, for inaugurating this session and sharing with us the sacred knowledge of yoga. As we know, yoga explores the deepest depths of harmony, unity, and it certainly is not limited to any sort of boundaries between cultures, religions, traditions, and even countries. And therefore, we next travel to Germany to hear our next distinguished speaker, the respected Mr. Sukadev Volker Bretz. And he will be talking on the topic of history of yoga in the West, yoga as a means to connect cultures, religions, and traditions, from ancient Greeks to modern Hatha Yoga. And a little bit about him is that he was born in Germany in the year 1963 and is the founder of Yoga Vidya Ashram in Germany, which is Europe's largest provider of courses, seminars, training, and advanced education in the field of yoga, meditation, and well-being. He's a teacher of various seminars and training programs and the author of numerous books on the subject. He's the head of the Professional Yoga Teachers Association of BYV. He studied and learned under the guidance of Swami Vishnu Devanandji for 12 years and founded the Yoga Vidya Ashram in 1992 in Frankfurt, Germany. In the years to come, he's helped to establish more than 80 city centers and 4 larger ashrams which were established under his guidance. He teaches in the traditions of Swami Shivananda and Swami Vishnu Devanandji and has established the Yoga Vidya style as an autonomous yoga style, and his teachings, along with the efforts of the ashram, have had a formative influence on the development and the dissemination of the integral yoga knowledge in Germany and all of Europe. And so I now humbly request him to take the dais.
Om, Om, Om. Sahana Vavatu, Sahanau Bhunaktu, Sahaviyam Karavavahai, Tejasvinavaditamastu, Ma Vitvishavahai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Brothers and sisters, it is a great honor and privilege for me to speak at this e-conference on Universal Brotherhood. On behalf of Yoga Vidya, I want to thank Dr. Chinmay Pandya, Pro-Vice Chancellor of Dev Sanskriti Vishwavidyalaya, for inviting me to this important conference. Thanks to all devotees of Acharya Pandit Sri Ram Sharma Maharaj, to all idealists, karma yogis, sevakas of Dev Sanskriti Vishwavidyalaya, Gayatrikunj, all World Gayatri Pariwar, Shantikunj, for enabling this wonderful conference. Dr. Chinmay Pandya has visited our ashram 2 years ago, and 2 years ago we had a wonderful meeting, felt a deep heart connection. I'm full of admiration to the wonderful work of All World Gayatri Pariwar in general and Dev Sanskriti Vishwavidyalaya specifically. A lot of what we want to achieve in Germany on a small scale, you have achieved on a very large scale already. I'm not used to give talks in English anymore, so please forgive me that I'm not as fluent in English as I would have been 30 years ago when I was living in Canada and in the US. We are in a special time, which shows our interconnectedness quite drastically. The corona pandemic is paralyzing life everywhere. Many ashrams worldwide are in lockdown. Ours had been in lockdown for 2 months, or more than 2 months. It has reopened some time ago. Many have special restrictions. Millions are infected by this new disease, corona. Hundreds of thousands have died. The livelihood of many is threatened. Poverty and hunger are increasing. And maybe even worse, tensions in and among communities are rising. We want to have this universal brotherhood as a counter means to it. We want to establish the feeling of brotherhood, sisterhood, of feeling connected. Religion, spirituality, yoga can offer great solace during these times. Many yogis say that outer catastrophes like natural calamities and pandemics can be co-caused by vibrations of hatred, of anger, of separation by many. If the thought atmosphere is impure, there can be bad physical consequences. On the other hand, If the thought atmosphere in the whole world is charged with light and love, with brotherhood and understanding, then the physical world can also change for the better. Here, Indian spirituality, Gayatri mantra, the yoga techniques can be of tremendous help. Spiritual practices of the ancient rishis can help to purify the mind, increase the vibratory level, overcome greed, anger, and fear. Thus, a feeling of love and understanding can be established. A high spiritual vibration will permeate everything, and this can create a wonderful world, an ecological world, a peaceful world, a world of connectedness, and a world of health on a physical level, on an economical level, ecological level, emotional level, mental level, cultural level, educatory level, and spiritual level. I come from Yoga Vidya Ashram in Germany. We're by far not as big as all World Gayatri Pariwar. We have 4 ashrams. Our biggest can host up to 1,000 yoga practitioners. We have yoga centers in many German cities. We have trained nearly 20,000 yoga teachers. Around 500,000 German-speaking aspirants practice yoga according to our techniques. We are very similarly to the Gayatri Pariwar, saying that yoga and spirituality has to have effect on health, on social level, ecological level, economic level, cultural, social, spiritual, all the different levels. We center our teachings on 6 yoga paths, we at Yoga Vidya, and I think all are important for universal brotherhood. This, of course, yoga can be subdivided in many different ways. We subdivide it in 6 paths. The first is Nyana Yoga, then Raja Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Karma Yoga, Kundalini Yoga, Hatha Yoga. I say all are important for universal brotherhood. I want to say a few words about that, and afterwards I want to say a little bit on historical history of yoga and how yoga has always spread universal brotherhood already hundreds and thousands of years ago. The 6 yoga paths, first is Nyana Yoga. Nyana Yoga means yoga of knowledge. And I think Dr. Pandya, Chinmay talked a little about the yoga philosophy. And there are different ways how you can structure yoga philosophy, especially if we structure yoga philosophy for the Western mind. Sometimes we have to make some adjustments. Most important is there's Brahman, one universal principle behind everything. And if you realize that inside everybody there's the same Atman, the same self, expressing Brahman in every individual, then immediately you have the feeling of oneness. Let's go beyond the small feelings of separateness. Bodies are separate, minds are separate, but on Brahman, on the consciousness itself, we're all connected. And whenever we see somebody, whenever we're together with somebody, let's connect from the heart and let's say, Namaste, I salute the divine in you. So Brahman is a very important principle in Nyana Yoga. The second important principle in Nyana Yoga is Maya. Maya, you all know, means illusion. This means the world in which we are right now is illusory. There are so many errors. We don't need to go as far as to say there is no world. That's something very philosophical. On a practical level, we can all say our worldview is full of errors. Our mind is continuously misleading us. And by knowing a little bit that mind can mislead us, we can connect to others, and we know others have their own worldview, I have my worldview, we have different worldviews, but all worldviews coming from the mind in the end are Maya. And so we can accept the worldview of others. They might all have their meaning for them. From a higher point of view, there's one divine reality behind everything, there's Brahman. And then there's Maya. And then, of course, we have the one third principle calling dukkha. And dukkha means suffering. On the physical level, we're suffering. On an emotional level, we're suffering. On a mental level, we're suffering. Real peace, real joy comes from a higher plane, comes from Brahman. And let's see the suffering in others. Let's try to help others. Instead of seeing just our own suffering, let's see the suffering of others. And if sometimes people behave in a strange way, maybe they're just full of suffering. Let's alleviate suffering instead of increasing to the suffering. And that is maybe the biggest message of Nyana Yoga philosophy. There is moksha. And moksha means there is liberation. We can go beyond Maya, beyond dukkha, and merge with Brahman. So this yoga philosophy helps immediately to feel brotherhood to everybody. In the depth of our heart, we're all connected. Second of the yogas, first Jnana Yoga, second is Bhakti Yoga. Bhakti Yoga is the yoga of devotion, the yoga of love for the divine. On this level we can say we're all children of the same God. We're the same children of the same divine. God is like our universal father or universal mother, universal brother. We are all linked with each other as children of the divine. And we can make ourselves instruments in the hands of the divine. In the end, it's all meant by God. Whether we call God Ishvara or Krishna or Shiva or the Lord or the Holy Spirit, it doesn't really matter. Main feeling is we feel that the whole world is a manifestation of this divine, and we want to serve, and we want to feel inspired. We want to have that closeness to God. And of course, Bhakti Yoga is also a practice, like chanting and puja, homa, and admiring the beauty of God. Third of the yogas is Raja Yoga. Raja Yoga, the kingly yoga. Raja Yoga wants to teach us how to master our mind, how to control our mind. Because what prevents us of being brothers and sisters, of feeling brothers and sisters, it's our thoughts, it's our emotions, it's conditioning. We can go beyond all conditionings by practicing meditation, by practicing yama and niyama and so on. So we need to do practices. Usually I say we have to do sadhana, spiritual practices like meditation, like chanting, like japa, like asana, pranayama, and whatever your spiritual practice is. We need spiritual practices to control our mind. We also need satsang. We need to be together. We need to feel together. And today, sometimes it's not easy to come together for a while. And I don't know how it's now in India. And for a while in Germany, we were not permitted to meet in a spiritual environment. We had to separate. Now, luckily, we can have satsang together. And now we can have internet satsang. Now what we have is satsang. You see me, I feel you. We are in a common satsang together with the different speakers, with the listeners, with those who enable this event to happen. So we need to do sadhana, satsang, and we also need to live a sattvic life. That is also important. If we eat meat and drink alcoholic beverages and so on, it has an effect on the mind. It will create not so nice thoughts in our mind. It's important we live a sattvic life. That's in some way part of all the different yoga paths. It's especially important in the Raja Yoga path, where you say you want to control the mind. And to control the mind, you need to live a sattvic life. Fourth of these yoga paths is Karma Yoga. Karma Yoga on one hand side, the yoga of selfless service. And of course, selfless service that creates a feeling of brotherhood, of sisterhood. If you help each other, if you help somebody else, there's naturally a feeling of love. I don't think there's anything more powerful to feel a feeling of brotherhood than working together for a good cause and to help somebody. If you help somebody, serve somebody, you feel connected with him or her. And if you serve together, a big community is created. So I'm sure in your community, you'd work together, you help together, and you feel this brotherhood. And let's expand it more and more. Let's not just help those directly around us, let's help those too, but also let's do seva for so many people. Now, something which for us in Germany is quite important, and beyond these four classical yoga paths, is Kundalini Yoga and Hatha Yoga. Kundalini Yoga is quite important because those who serve, who want to spread good ideas, those who want the peace in the world and who want to increase the feeling of brotherhood, sisterhood, those have to have a certain energy. Also, whether you're directed by lower thoughts or by higher vibrations, it all depends on the vibratory level of your energies. If your energy is just in your lower chakras, then it's going to be difficult to have elevating thoughts. And so you have different practices to elevate your energies. Meditation on the chakras, the use of mantras, and specific energy techniques. Uplift your energies, and it will be easier to uplift your mind. If you feel your mind is down, depressed, or easy in fear, or in anger, or greed, this means your energy level is down. You need to increase your energy level. You need to increase your vibratory level. And one of the techniques for all of that is Hatha Yoga. Hatha Yoga with its asanas, pranayama, relaxation techniques. Just to mention the three most important techniques besides mudra, bandha, kriya, etc. So in the West, Hatha Yoga is especially important. In the West, people are very stressed. If you're stressed, then it's difficult to feel connected with others. So you need to relax. And minds are agitated. In the Hatha Yoga scriptures it said, if the prana is agitated, the mind will be agitated. If you work on your prana, on your life force, then the mind will become quieter and the mind will become quiet and powerful. So you practice asanas to relax your body. You practice pranayama to get control over the mind and lift up your vibratory level. And you practice deep relaxation techniques to elevate your mind further. So these are the 6 yoga paths which can be practiced together, or you can choose one main path. Now, yoga has been around in this world for thousands and thousands of years. Nobody knows when yoga really started. According to one mythology, you know it better than me, during According to one myth, Brahma, the creator, created first the Vedas, and out of the Vedas he created this world, and he created the spiritual practices, the yogic practices, which can help you to go beyond the world and come back to your true nature. So, yoga is ancient. The ancient rishis codified it, and they made out of yoga a system. And out of these systems then came the different scriptures where they are codified. But I don't want to just talk about the ancient yoga history in India, but I want to speak about yoga in the West. Civilizations have never been as separate as some people think. Some would say yoga came to the West maybe in the 19th century with Swami Vivekananda, that great yogi from Bengal who came for the World Parliament of Religion, end of the 19th century, and with his strong, powerful speech, he impressed so many, so that afterwards he went through many cities in the US and later in Europe also. He established Vedanta centers, and that was the beginning of the yoga movement in the West. But that's not complete. It started much earlier. You could already say a few thousands of years before Common Era, you had different civilization. You had it in Egypt, you had it in China, you had it in India, Indus Valley, Saraswati Valley, later Ganga Valley, Mesopotamia. So we had the different civilizations. And today it's known they were not so much isolated as they used to think. But they were connected. There was trade going on, and together with the trade also thoughts and philosophy, religion, spiritual practices. And so it's not so much of a wonder, a miracle, that some spiritual principles already in Egypt and in the Vedas and in China, they're quite similar. They have divine principles, they have the concept of energy, they have life force, what in yoga we call prana, they have the concept of reincarnation, they have the concept of many principles that is common in India also. So most likely India had already some influence on ancient Egypt, Chinese, Mesopotamic civilizations. Definitely influence on Persia and via Persia further. Next big important period is the period of the ancient Greeks. Like Alexander the Great, he conquered ancient Persian Empire and he went to India. For a while he wanted to conquer India, but he had to find out to conquer the different kings in northern India, it's not so easy, and his soldiers rebelled. But Alexander the Great, among himself, he had some philosophers and he had some scribes, and they found out in India there are great philosophers. He called them, or the Greeks called them, gymnosophoi. This means the naked sages. Most likely they were not completely naked, but maybe some might have been naked, but most likely they had loincloths. But the Greek, they had big toga, like a meditation shawl, which is much longer. And they were quite impressed by the philosophy of these great Indian philosophers and also their spiritual practices. Some of the big philosophical schools in ancient Greece have strongly been influenced by these Indian masters, especially the Stoics. I don't know whether you heard about those. There was some Cicero and there was some Mark Aurel and some Seneca. So some great political figures. They were at the same time great philosophers and they actually had a philosophy which is much similar to Raja Yoga, in the sense of master your own mind, keep your mind under control, work for the common good, and try to lead a peaceful life. So this ancient principle of yoga had a strong influence on Greek and Roman culture. Then came the Christian era, and some say also that Christian philosophy had been influenced by Hindu and Buddhist teachings. At that time there was no difference between Hindu and Buddhist teachings. You could say yoga, Buddhist teaching, Jain teaching, and others, they were considered the Shramana tradition as far as the practices are concerned. And then of course you had the philosophy. In Christian philosophy you had the ideal of renunciation, of leading a very simple life, of ahimsa. So quite a few ideals which you find in the Yoga Sutra. The ahimsa, this means universal brotherhood, don't hurt anybody's feelings, and also of maitri, love and compassion towards all, not just to those of your own people, but to everybody. So some say that the teachings of Jesus have also been influenced by teachings of India. Well, it continues later. Let's skip a few centuries. In the 16th century, Europeans came to visit India. The 17th century, the British Raj started. The British, of course, they were those who tried to domineer, and they extracted money and so much from India. But also, out of that connection of the British and the Europeans with Indian and Chinese culture, they found out, well, there are high cultures in different areas in the world. And it's not just the Europeans which have great culture, but there's great culture in India, in China, and in Persia, and so on. So there came an age of enlightenment in the 17th century, 17th, 18th century in Europe, and the big philosophers like Kant and others of the age of enlightenment, they had been strongly influenced by, or impressed by, knowledge of some Indian culture and by some Buddhist and Chinese scriptures. So already during that time, the human rights and all other declarations which followed in the 18th century, for them it was important. Humans in the whole world, they contribute to the world culture. So not enough it's recognized that the great thinkers in the 17th and 18th century knew the Upanishads, they knew the Bhagavad Gita and other scriptures also. Then, of course, in the 19th century, there came the Theosophists. There's still the Theosophical Society in Adya in India, and it has no longer such a big following in Europe and America, but the influence was quite strong. The Theosophical Society spread yoga, meditation, and other yogic techniques in Europe and in America. Of course, they linked it with a special understanding of Indian and Buddhist philosophy, an understanding of esoteric, occult philosophy, so they mixed quite a lot. But they also tried to establish the feeling of universal brotherhood in the whole world. That was quite important for them, that in the whole world peace should come. Again, this is an influence from yoga and Indian culture. Also very little known is that quite a few of the important psychologists in the West have been influenced by Yoga Sutra and other Indian texts. Like, for example, William James, who was one of the founder of academic psychology in America, or C.G. Jung, one German philosopher, Abraham Maslow, and somebody important after the Second World War. They all had studied Indian philosophy, Indian scriptures, Indian psychology, and partially were also practicing meditation. So the advent of Western psychology is to a high degree linked also with the contact with Indian psychology. Modern psychology tries to help people to get better understanding of themselves, and modern psychology also says that hatred and even the war and so on is a sign of some psychological problems. Somebody who is at peace with himself can be at peace with others. Then, of course, came Swami Vivekananda in the 19th century, then came Paramahamsa Yogananda, then came Swami Shivananda, and many others who spread yoga in the West, and some also made a big renaissance in India, like this very, very important Acharya Pandit Sri Ram Sharma Maharaj. So many spread yoga in India, and some spread it in the West. Now, from the end of the 19th century, especially Hatha Yoga became popular, and in the 60s and 70s of the 20th century, Hatha Yoga became quite popular. And Hatha Yoga is today very much linked to trying to feel relaxed, trying to be healthy, also trying to live more an ecological lifestyle, to be more socially connected, and to feel connected with the whole world. There is the International Day of Yoga, the 21st of June, where we also participate with our German ashrams and centers. And many on the whole world will feel connected the 21st of June. But not only the 21st of June, International Day of Yoga, but whenever yoga practitioners come together, they do asanas together, they hold their breath together, they relax together, there's a feeling of brotherhood. In this respect, or in this way, yoga has been a force for thousands of years to help a feeling of connectedness. Yoga has been a force for hundreds of years to feel together Indian and Western culture. And yoga, understood in its broader sense, now is a very important force for brotherhood and feeling connected. In this way, I want to encourage you just now to repeat Om with me for 3 times, and then go for a moment into silence. And then we want to feel connected. We want to feel this feeling of brotherhood and sisterhood. Om, Om, Om. Let's feel connected. Let's feel peace, love, and joy. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. May all beings attain peace and harmony. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Thank you for listening, thank you for watching. And again, many thanks to Dr. Chinmay Pandya, and many thanks to all the devotees and selfless workers who enable this wonderful event. May we all be connected in a feeling of brotherhood and sisterhood. May we all feel connected in love from our heart. And I'm looking forward for more cooperation with this wonderful Dev Sanskriti Vishwavidyalaya and Shantikunj and Gayatrikunj. Thank you very much. Let's work together for Universal Brotherhood.